Chris Stevens.
Thanks very much, Mr Robertson. It's a pleasure to see you in the chair, and can I congratulate the honourable member for Northampton South for securing this debate. And I do note that he chairs the APPG for SME House Builders, and I'm looking forward to the report. I know he touched on some of the issues, but I'm looking forward to seeing that report published, so that can also once again create a wider discussion around some of the issues facing SME house builders. The honourable gentleman set up the APPG in reaction to the UK Government's goal of delivering 300,000 houses to be built a year. But some of the other issues that will be familiar to the honourable gentleman and others, which I think is useful to mention as part of the background, and that is cash holdings have a greater significance for SMEs than they do for the larger house builders, because they represent a much higher proportion of the company's equity, and as a result SMEs have greater exposure when in the early stages of development. Costs associated with land purchase, infrastructure and groundworks must all be funded before the developer can see some balancing of the debt from sales revenue. And SMEs, of course, do not have the financial firepower of the volume builders, and very often cannot acquire even small sites to put into the land bank, because any funding so committed does not earn that immediate return. But Mr Robertson, Scotland is leading the way in delivering affordable and social housing across the UK and supports SMEs. But we do have to recognise that the increased cost of finance from interest rates and interest rate rises following the crashing of the economy is particularly troubling for cash flow of SMEs and house builders. And that there are wider challenges there, and the context has to be considered. That the UK is the only major economy, is one of the few major economies, including Russia incidentally, to shrink in 2023. Wages next year are projected to be the lowest since 2006, and the inflation rate is the worst in the G7 last year. And there's also issues in relation to Brexit and the lack of business investment that's coming as a result of that. And the knock-on financing issues and mortgage prices increases have consequent issues for house buyers and builders alike. But there's also some other issues, I would argue, Mr Robertson, must be raised here on behalf of not just the SME house builders, but SMEs across the board, because research by the Federation of Small Businesses has shown that more than half of SMEs across the UK suffer crippling cash flow issues due to late payments of invoices, with figures showing that over 18 months to 2 years, almost 500,000 businesses had gone bust due to that very issue. Last year, the Federation of Small Business warned that 1 in 10 Scottish firms had reported that late payment was threatening the viability of their businesses. With the increased cost of credit with higher interest rates, the effective cost of late payments is higher than ever. And I note my colleague from Dunfermline and West Fife recently hosted a round table here with accountants to tackle that issue, because at present the UK Government's voluntary prompt payment code recommends that SMEs are paid within 30 days, but we need to see more being done in practice with that, rather than small firms having to be left to wait 60, 90 and 120 days from payment with big firms. So I hope that the Minister will can tell us what discussions she's having with our colleagues to make sure that not just SME house builders, but SMEs across the board are being assisted, and what action the government is taking to ensure that SMEs don't suffer from the issue of late payments. Now, despite the challenges of austerity, Mr Robertson, Scotland's 5-year £3.5 billion commitment on the affordable housing supply programme remains. There's always going to be peaks and troughs of investment towards that goal. The Scottish Government has put £752 million investment for 23-24, represents progress towards the £3.5 billion pledge. And in the most challenging budget settlements that we've had, the Scottish Government is providing £13.5 billion in the 2023-2024 local government finance settlement, supporting local authorities and communities to meet their housing needs and homelessness targets. Scotland continues to be a good place to buy a first home, with the average first-time buyer spending around £100,000 less for a property than in England, and that will be familiar to those of us who are elected as members of Parliament when we arrive here and look at the property prices in London trying to rent somewhere, and we walk past an estate agent and we see what we consider to be a Premiership transfer fee, but that in actual fact is the property price, Mr Robertson. But that will be familiar to those of us who are members of Parliament from out of London when we arrive here as one of the challenges that faces us as members of Parliament. The latest statistics show that 22,905 new build homes were completed in Scotland in the year to end September 22, providing people with warm, secure homes in all sectors. Scotland has also led the way, Mr Robertson, delivering affordable and social housing across the UK, with more than 118,000 homes delivered since 2007. And as the Honourable Gentleman for Westmoreland, I think I've got that right, Westmoreland and Lonsdale, got it right first time, that's great. The Right Honourable Gentleman for Westmoreland and Lonsdale said in his remark, it's important that it's the right type of housing. It's important that what's being built is affordable, is for social rent, and is an affordable home ownership. So I can tell my friend from Westmoreland and Lonsdale, of the 50,000 affordable homes completed in Scotland, 69% for social rent, 12% were for affordable rent, and 19% were for affordable home ownership. And in conclusion, Mr Robertson, there is a good story to tell in Scotland. We have to ensure that the challenges that house builders have met through the pandemic, through the economic challenges it has, that we also demonstrate and learn from Scotland's collaborative approach with Scotland's housing partnerships, social landlords, local authorities, community bodies and construction sector developers. Thank you.